Well, hello everybody, and welcome again to another edition of Coffee with Craig. I'm Craig Hamilton Parker. I'm a psychic medium, and if you've not been here before, well, this is where we talk about the things that are happening in the news from a standpoint of a psychic. Try to give a spiritual perspective on it, and maybe a few predictions for you as well today. Lots going on in the world at the moment. It's going to be quite an interesting thing. I'm going to try to cover as many topics as I can. And if you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe. And if you're here for the umpteenth time, please give us a thumbs up because that helps the algorithm. You've got a little bit of time now while we put the titles on. So welcome to Coffee with Craig. Well, good to see you all again. And today's date is the 4th of February 2025, when I'm making these various predictions that might come up in this as well. And so much has been happening, hasn't it? And it's interesting also. I always like to review some of the predictions I've already made. And I would like to thank some of you out there who have been helping me try to find some of the clips that go missing, because I do many of these videos. Some of them are an hour or so long, and finding the clips where I've said something is difficult. So I like to be able to verify what I've said sometimes. But we found a few, some for the LA fires. I can't find the actual clip where I've said where I actually said about the dream standing on the pier at Santa Monica, but I'll find that sooner or later. It's probably one of the more obscure ones, I expect. And thank you for finding those clips for me, guys. And if any of you want to help me with this, I'd be really grateful. Anybody, if can help perhaps with the timestamps, that's something I find struggle with. If you want to do a timestamp on each video and pop it in the comments, I can then put it into the actual video base itself, because all of this, I'm a one-man show with this. I don't have a team working with me. Anyway, there was the LA fire clips, some of which we found. The cryptocurrency crash I've been talking about as well. There's been a crash recently, actually, with cryptocurrency, and I'm seeing a lot more of that happening ahead. I'll talk about that in the program. The US, the growth in the lack of growth, rather, or the slump in the UK economy, I've talked about before. So that's also something I've been talked about before, which I'll also mention briefly here today. And interestingly, did you see that I'd made a clip? There was a clip I made where I said I saw an aeroplane crash with a helicopter. The only bit I got wrong, of course, I put a part of the clip up for you, actually, but I said it was on the UK. I thought I saw it happening in the UK, over the rivers in the UK, but of course it was in America. So I was a bit off, but two airplanes, I said, because there would be a second one, and there was a second one immediately afterwards, and then the crash with the helicopter and the aeroplane, which is one of the biggest disasters in American aviation history for a long time. So sad to see it, but it's interesting to see that these predictions can be quite unusual sometimes and come true. A hit or attack on our airplanes, on maybe on passenger flights or even freight flights, because I also had, at the similar time, I was also seeing this image of helicopters on fire as well. And I often find it's the most weird stuff that often comes true in the things I say. And I think those are the things, when you don't know anything about what's going on, you can't be influenced by the news and things. And those are the ones that I find important. And I've got a couple of those that I'm going to share with you later today. Again, some of these stimulated by dreams, which I feel are a way in for many of us to understand how the clairvoyance works, because it comes from that other part of the brain, doesn't it? It's not the rational brain. It comes from that unexpected ideas that pop into your head. It makes me wonder sometimes that all ideas might be things that actually float around there out in the etheric, and all we have to do is pull them down like apples from the tree, the golden apples of the sun. We just pluck them and that idea comes to us as if it's out there. Anyway, that's perhaps for another time, or perhaps a chat at the end. Okay, first thing that's coming up, and I'm going to talk about my thoughts about the tariffs. I'm talking about hanging fruit. I think he's gone for Canada first, because in many respects, that's the easiest area for Trump to show a win over with Canada, because Canada's kind of a bit of a vulnerable and easy target. And is obviously a friend, not an enemy of America. And I noticed that Trump met with Trudeau before all these tariffs came in. So I think Trudeau's been there quaking in his boots. And it didn't take a great deal of extra effort to give one phone call to Trudeau, or Trudeau to phone Trump, and Trudeau really to begin to cave in. I think that's what's happening in the background. But Trump has said, okay, we'll give you a little bit of an extension. We'll extend the time. We'll give you 30 days. So this is typical Trump sort of shake up the world type of thing. And it's quite important that he has kind of lumped together Canada, Mexico, and China all together. It's like we put a friend in with the enemies, as it were, to say, well, we can't have, make sure my phone's turned off. I always do that. We can't make it look as if it's just China we're after. It applies to everybody. So this is kind of signaling, isn't it? 70% of the GDP of Canada, I believe, is reliant on imports and exports. So they're very vulnerable in that respect, far more vulnerable than America would be. So bully your friend first, it seems, with this one. And they say it's all about fentanyl and border controls. It's nothing to do with that. This is about oil, ultimately, I feel, with this one, and proving that you can get an early win as well. And he needs to show that it works. So he bullies the school softy. That's how I think he's working here. I know we shouldn't laugh about these things, but it does go that way, doesn't it? It does feel like that. It almost feels like playground politics here. But I think if you show that you show that he can weaken the position of one leader, it helps to push the agenda. And I think Trudeau's already on his way out, but I think this is like, I'm going to have Trudeau's head on a platter over this. So anybody else coming in after Trudeau's gone is going to have to think very carefully about how they handle Trump. So my feeling with this is that the tariffs on Canada, I know he's delayed them, but I feel they're going to be a short-term thing, and I feel that they will be dropped quite quickly. Well, not completely dropped. He's going to be using tariffs as his main weapon. Trump is, but I feel part of the price of the deal is going to be Trudeau's head. And once Trump has guaranteed a quick source of cheaper oil into the USA, I feel that's going to be part of this. We're going to get cheap, because short term, Trump needs extra oil because we can't drill it that quick. So if we get some cheap oil in from Canada, we work on our tariffs for that. This will also help the bigger picture, which is where he's with the move on Russia. Get the oil prices down so we can make it difficult for Russia to be competitive on the oil front. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about Russia in a minute, because I feel this is, again, although it's far away and it's a separate thing, my feeling is his thinking is we've got to start working the oil thing out now. Oil's a big energy producer. Let's get that sorted out. And Canada, I feel, is going to be the first, not victim, but the first deal. I feel the first deal that's going to be made with Canada. And actually, it would work out okay in the end for both countries, I feel. This is fear mongering at the moment, but I predict that Canada's going to get on quite well ultimately with America. Whether it becomes a 51st state, I think is just another crazy idea in some respects, but it could mean much greater collaboration between America and Canada. And I feel this is going to happen with, as I've said before, with other countries in the world. Britain's going to be sucked into this idea. Australia will be, India ultimately, and New Zealand, and so on. The old English-speaking peoples of the world, I feel, going to come together in some respects. I think it's somewhere in the back of his mind with this, and it might be a good trading thing for the future, just like the Europe came together, but it didn't work because it was all it was all committees, and that don't work. But I feel as if there could be a trading bond coming up and greater affiliation. And there's something that he's got in his mind, and he's thinking that with Canada, and he's thinking also with Greenland here. Because one of the important things that nobody's talking about, which is going to be the big thing, and I've said this in my earlier predictions that I made before the beginning of this year, I said that there's going to be a huge, big issues over critical metals, and rare earth metals, all these critical minerals and things that are essential for running any electronic and defense machinery. And Greenland, that's what he's after there, is the mining rights. It's about mining. It's about this money. You see, Trump thinks money, Trump thinks territory. And those are two things in his agenda. So that's what I think is going on in the background here. It's all about mining rights, and it's all about oil, nothing to do with fentanyl. What do you think? Nothing to do even with people coming across the border there with Canada, because this is quite a small proportion of people compared to what's happened in Mexico. Yeah, so here we go. It's a funny thing. How can a program be interesting when you're talking about world tariffs? I mean, where have we gone to? But that's the way it's working. But it's interesting because it is changing the way the world works very much. The tariffs on Mexico are, of course, one of the other ones, and I feel they're going to remain high for a long time. Obviously, he's targeted the border, and also again the fentanyl type of thing, and the traffic from drugs and so forth, and those are good PR things to talk about. But again, I think in the background is more interested in Chinese goods coming in through the back door, and in particular car parts, because many cars are manufactured or put together in America from parts brought in through Mexico. So we'll make the Lego bricks and you put them together, but those Lego bricks, as it were, are being made in China. So I think it's trying to close a back door of entry there first and foremost. That's what I feel he's looking at, and what I think people miss when they talk about this. I feel that there will be a deal done with Mexico, particularly on tariffs on food. Because America imports a hell of a lot of food from Mexico. And I feel that will initially cause ahead, you're going to see big steep rises in food prices. I see food prices going up on vegetables. But then Americans don't eat vegetables. Do you? It's all burgers over there like we do here in the UK. No, but there will be some increases in food prices, I feel. But this is part of a longer fight, really, to control things like the border, of course, which is high on the agenda of what Trump wants to do, and the drug cartels, which nobody can sort of knock that as an idea. But I feel that in Mexico, what's her name? Claudia something, isn't it? Claudia Sheinbaum or something in Mexico, the female leader of Mexico is. I get the sense that she's quite a switched on person, actually. And I feel she'll actually get a deal done with Trump, and Mexico won't suffer as much as I think everybody thinks it's going to suffer. In fact, I've said it before, I was doing a reading with somebody from Mexico, and a whole load of stuff flooded in about Mexico while I was doing it. So sorry, I've gotten all these things about Mexico while I'm doing your reading, the personal reading. But it was very clear from this Mexican businessman that was talking to me through the reading that Mexico's not going to suffer. In fact, Mexico's going to actually going to pull back from this, and it's going to be the beginning of a bit of a rebirth in Mexico, because first and foremost, you're getting your young people back, which you need to make an economy work. You're getting the drug cartels under control, which is bringing down the law and order. You get that sorted out. Even though they're being pushed back across the border, I feel there's going to be a much bigger clampdown, and maybe some American help to help break those cartels. So this stronger border ultimately is going to benefit both countries. So I predict that Mexico will eventually comply with Trump's demands. In the long term, I predict that Mexico will benefit, and actually by relying on its own industries, not bringing stuff, just being an import place from China, and retaining its young people, I feel is going to be important, and eventually forming a free society and a stable society free from gangsters. So it's not quite so bad for Mexico, even though, you know, everybody, of course, is up in arms about the idea of deporting people and the rest of it. But those are people of talent who have learned, who could actually restore Mexicans' economy, I feel. Now, the tariffs on China is a much more different one. Can you sit and listen to a program about tariffs? I'm just listening to myself here. I think it's funny, really, sometimes, isn't it? Here we are. But it's become so important to us all, hasn't it? But okay, the tariffs on China, right? He's talking initially about 10%, but he does want to get much higher than that. And so he's lumped Canada, Mexico, and China together, first of all, that I've said, to show it's sort of he's impartial. Right, we're impartial. It's everybody's going to have to play by these rules, but it's China he's after ultimately, because that's the biggest threat to American advancement, and also the biggest threat to the world democracy, really, because it's a communist organization that's running China, and it's, although it seems to work for Chinese people at the moment, is it really worth giving up your freedoms for these things? But anyway. And a lot of the stuff that's coming in, for example, I mean, he's been closing down some of these direct, you can sell direct from China from small companies straight into America. Those are coming from not just sweatshops. They're coming from very slave labor orientated peoples there, you know, the Uyghur people and all the other ones that we forget about very conveniently when we get our cheap goods from China, are making these cheap wedding dresses and the rest of it, and all sorts of bad labor practices for children and the rest of it, all coming out of China, and we buy it direct, no questions asked. How much smoke they chuck into the air to make the stuff too, we don't question about. We just, as long as we can feel comfortable that we're driving around in an electric car and not make any fumes, you know, I mean, it's crazy, in my opinion. Much better, the oil is produced, the factories that use the oil in the West would be better, and not pump out as much rubbish as letting them do it in China and turn a blind eye. Sorry, I'm going off. but he's going to get he's going to get to China. He's going to get to China a bit at a time. And he's going to close all these loopholes that I've just spoken about there, and close all these firms. Temu, I think it is, and Shane, isn't these were in the news, I feel. I don't know much about them, but that's going to be important. But the big deal behind it, the real big deal behind it all, is that rare earth minerals and critical minerals, if I've got the words right for that. But these things are absolutely essential for the American economy. And China, as far as I know, is not only has a large supply of them, but most importantly, they developed their mining industries far ahead of everybody else. You remember Afghanistan, the rights for the rare earth metals and so on were bought up by Chinese companies as Biden pulled out and left all the American hardware there. But more importantly, they left all the potential American mining rights there as well. So suddenly we're going to need loads of these if Elon Musk wants to have his electric vehicles and the rest of it, and all the other electrical stuff, and Apple and everything. We need these critical minerals. And this, like I said at the beginning of the year, is going to be the number one talking point. And I feel this is kind of already starting to raise its head. But there's something else too, because actually, when you look at this, Ukraine also has a big supply of untapped rare earth metals and critical minerals, and lots of all the other stuff you need, lithium and all the rest of it, and cobalt and things and like that you need for all these electrical devices. So could it be that part of what Trump's got in mind is, when we do this deal with Russia, first of all, we get the oil price down. That's why we're hitting Canada. And I expect he'll do other things where he'll hit other countries to make the oil price come down, as well as his own drilling as he's after. But get that oil price down so Russia's on the back foot. At the same time, offer Ukraine a deal, maybe by even changing the government, by insisting they have political change there of some sort, have elections first, they're talking about, but get the deal done and say, right, okay, we'll help rebuild Ukraine, but we want your mining rights. We're going to come in, we're going to use all the mining rights in Ukraine. And when we do that, that money's going to help rebuild your country, and we'll help protect that because we've got an interest there. Meanwhile, Russia will do a deal. We'll let you have some of the land of Ukraine. We'll forget about the Crimea. You can have that. We'll cut that up, divide it up like we divided up the Middle East. It always works, doesn't it? And then we can think again. So that's what I feel is going to be the starting point for a deal in Ukraine. It's that what you think. Trump thinks money, doesn't he? And he thinks land and divisions. And I see him looking at those rare earth metals as being a way of bailing America out. If that don't work, well, we'll go for Greenland, because there's also a lot of it there in Greenland. And let's see if we can do a deal there. Why does America suddenly need Greenland? It's not strategically that important militarily. But there's something else there, but they've got these critical minerals. That's what it's all about. That's what nobody's talking about. And that's what I feel is the important things, because China has the minerals and we can't beat China unless we also have the same. It's become a bigger thing as oil. It's critical, literally. So my predictions there, again, with China, basically, is the economic effects of the tariffs will eventually bite. And in China, we're going to see social unrest when this happens. Normally, people are too scared to put their head above the parapets in in China. They're too scared. But once money starts running out, once there's things like jobs and no food and there's food shortages or whatever comes from this, it's going to cause social unrest. And I predict eventually, and then we might see it within the next few years, quite not far away. I feel Xi Jinping. I think your days are numbered, mate. And it could be a crisis. This could be the crisis that triggers a third term for Trump as well, because I've said, and this was something that's come up in the news, that there'd be a potential third term for Trump. And when I said that, everybody howled at me. Don't be stupid, Craig. We can't do that. Look at the amendment, this and that and that. And, I thought, well, that's what I saw. Sorry, guys. But what happening there is, if they're talking about it, but I feel as the Republicans sort of dig up more and more reasons why the election might have been hijacked, or the corruption that was in the background in the Biden laptops and all the rest of it, and all that, even though they can't be prosecuted, this is politically very powerful. Could that be part of saying, well, we've been cheated out of a term, let's change this? And now, in a critical time, as China begins to cave in, and could that be around 2028 when the next election is? Could that be a cave in time for China at that time? And simultaneously, Trump saying, look, it's too dangerous for me to not complete the job now. That's the sort of thing that I'm getting the feeling of. And we're talking about this now in 2025. So it's quite a way ahead, some of this. But can we not feel the seeds now with this? Okay, let's talk more about tariffs. I'm sure you'd love to hear more about this. Tariffs in the UK and Europe. Well, I think it's pretty obvious that Trump sees Starmer as a bit of a twit. Actually, most people see him as very wooden. If there ever was a reptilian leader, it must be Starmer, because he is reptile-like. I'm sure he must have cold skin. I mean, he has that. He seems so wooden. Sorry for those of you that voted for him, but I think the country here in the UK doesn't like the guy much, and I feel that he's trying quite cleverly, on give him some credit. He's trying to sort of deal with Europe and deal with America, but his leaning is wanting to go back to the EU. He wants, I wish we could be back in the EU. Do you remember I said in my predictions, going quite a way back, but once the Labour get in, it's going to be back in the EU by the back door, and let's get out of Brexit. Okay. And he's trying to do all those things, but of course it's backfiring, because reform as a movement has now overtaken the Tories and overtaken Labour, and it's going to become a real force in this country. Well, I'll talk about that more in a future date, I think, because it's so involved that. But when it comes to the tariffs, Starmer's going to be pushed around quite a lot, and Rachel Reeves, with all her arrogance, is going to look quite a fool. She's not going to be around much longer. I feel she's going to be kicked out. In fact, both of them aren't going to be around much longer. Their days are quite numbered as leaders, but obviously it would mean a new leader of the Labour Party. But anyway, going back to the tariffs, I feel a deal will be done with the UK, but Starmer and Reeves will look like fools. And Trump will do that, make it look like that. Eventually, Trump's going to come over and see the king. He wants to do that. And that's going to be, oh, yes, we can, that's a good way to build bridges. But he'll also come over and he'll meet Farage and he'll meet Badenoch. But he'll give the cold shoulder to Starmer. He'll obviously have to meet him for discussions, but is he be warm to Farage and comparatively warm to Badenoch too, not as critical, even though Musk has been pretty harsh on Farage. So there will be big tariffs, and well, we know this anyway, but just as part of the flow of things, there are going to be huge tariffs on the euro, but there we'll see a settlement with Canada, and it will kind of give an idea of how we can work. He's not going to come into those, I don't think, quite as quickly as he's come into Canada and that. Trump, I feel, is working kind of incrementally. We'll sort Canada out. We've got an example we can show to others. We'll sort Mexico out because that's right on our border. And we can also offer an example to others from this about how harsh I can be if need be, or how kind. It's all stick and carrot, isn't it, this? And also disruption. It's going to be fascinating the way ahead. And I'm sure we'd all love to watch lots of news on the telly about tariffs. Of course, they're dodgy too, as we know, because they can massively increase inflation, and inflation is going to be a serious problem around the world. And I think some of the smaller countries are going to find it harder than America. Actually, we're going to see some very, very disruptive periods ahead with that, but we'll look at all that a little bit later on. I was also quite interested in this the Doge shutdown sort of thing of the US aid agency. Immediately they went in there. I don't know what you felt about this, but my feeling was, what have they found or will they find here? We were already getting releases of all the crazy money that's been put on crazy stuff for social engineering, really, of trying to sort of make everybody rethink everything about basics, like what is gender and all that stuff. So lots of money, obviously good thing to pull out straight away, because everybody can agree, oh yes, this is nonsense, we can't have this silliness. But I feel that there's going to also start, once we start digging, and once I feel Musk starts digging, and that's why he's kind of put him in, because Musk is not a politician. He's not been voted in by anybody. He's an independent sort of person. But I feel he's going to start digging out. He's going to start digging out all sorts of unusual stuff, and some of that is going to be very scary for the world, because I feel all the stuff about the Hunter Biden scandals and things like this are going to start being dug out as we start to cut departments. Why is this money being given here? Very clever idea, because here in the UK, they say, right, we want all the departments to shave off some money and so we can save money. But they're going about it in a different way, aren't they? They're saying, look, we want to look at every single thing they're spending money on, and we want to see if that can be reduced. And why are you spending money? I mean, I've read Elon Musk's book recently, absolutely brilliant, the one, the biography about him. And he's a man that looks to every nut and bolt, every single thing. On SpaceX, he was taking basic things that you think, well, you can't change that, and saying, you're right, change it, do it in stainless steel or whatever, don't lose all the, and will it work? Let's try it. It's cheaper to try test it out than it is to waste money on this. And it quite often worked. He has his failures too, but 99% of this been strangely successful. Same mindset being applied to a world, to an economy like the US is going to be remarkable. I think the amount of money they'll save, and it's going to be a model for places like here in the UK and Europe that are the most wasteful places on earth for money going into quangos and the rest of it. And so with all this, I think despite Biden pardoning his family, Musk and Trump are going to reveal a much deeper state of corruption nonetheless. And that's going to be quite a thing for the way ahead in the months ahead. So this period, I predict now that this is a period, is a prelude to a possible third term in office. Those things are important from what I've said here. We're going to see we're going to see with this whole idea of an extra term is needed to sanitize the swamp. That's what I feel will ultimately happen in 2008 when the next election is. And at the time of the US election, there's going to be other factors in the air. I sense a war of some kind. There's some war type thing happening around that time. Now, also ahead with all this going on, everything seems rosy, doing everything by but by tariffs. But there's a couple of things. Inflation is very dangerous, but also I did say that there's going to be that eventually this cryptocurrency idea, the bubble is going to pop. Now there has been just recently, and I said it would happen, that the cryptocurrency is going to do a bit of a be careful. Only hold on to the things that are well known, like the Bitcoins of this world, because a whole lot of it's going to be stripped out. We're going to see the bubble burst on crypto soon. And there's so much uncertainty in the markets generally. I mean, it doesn't just take a psychic to see this, actually, because where are these investors going to put their money in an uncertain market? They're not going to put it into some high risk thing like a new crypto coin, are they? They're going to put it into something safe. So I feel that that's going to be a major thing as we come up. It's hard to predict when it's going to be, but I feel we've seen the first rumbles of this. And I would say to people, be very, very careful with crypto investments. It's been shooting up for a while. It went shot right up and then it drops down and often it bounces back, and it will keep doing this trampoline. But I feel eventually it's a going down. My feeling is with that. Crypto's here to stay, but it's like any investment, at critical times, in times of war or in times of financial crisis, people you have to rethink where they put their money in. We haven't got gold to back up crypto. We probably haven't got gold to back up the currencies anyway, but there we go. There should be something that we fall back on. Dangerous times for that, I feel. People have been asking I asked a lot of the members out there and a lot of the patrons to put up questions. There's so many, I can't do them all because I would be here all day. And I'm going to obviously have to make another one next week as well. So we'll talk about other issues later. There was a few other things. Panama, I would mention that too. Although I don't see there's an actual invasion. I'm not seeing boats coming into Panama and Arab paratroopers going in or anything. But I did see when I was doing my meditations, actually US troops there. But I didn't feel it had been invaded. I feel it had been a deal done that we're going to put our troops in to check this out and to make sure that China has not bugged it all or got special stuff there. I saw troops going in. A deal will be done with Panama. He's bullying the school softies first. Again, you see, start with the easy stuff. But it's a big rewards on Panama if he can break the Chinese influence there. This is a secret war against China. Now, a few other things. I sometimes have these dreams, don't I? And I share them with you. Well, I dreamed I was in a knife fight. So that could be all your bad energy coming to me, couldn't it? No, I dreamed I was watching a knife fight. And in the dream, I felt there was a celebrity in this knife fight. So I'm seeing a knife attack on a celebrity. That's an unusual. So I see a knife attack on a celebrity, and there was a sense with it too that there was some prejudice against that person. So it might be something like they attacked them because they were gay or something like that. There's something like that, but there was a knife attack. So that's one prediction I'm putting out there now on the 4th of February 2025. And then I had another dream, and this seemed incongruous to me because it seemed unusual. But I dreamed I was in South Korea. Now, I know that South Korea has had an awful lot of troubles at the moment with martial law declaration and impeachment back in December, and hoping to get back to stability again there. And there's the whole society's in a bit of a flummox at the moment, I should imagine there. But I was on the border and I saw a conflict with North Korea. which is perhaps the worst possible time for South Korea to be involved in something like this. But there was a border, big border dispute between North and South Korea, and it maybe have something to do with the North Korean army wanting to save face over their kind of poor performance in the Ukrainian operation. So all these things in the world kind of link up. But I saw that and I thought, God, I can't say that in Coffee with Craig. That seems crazy. But I've got to say it because that's what I saw. So that's what I saw in the dream. And it came out of the blue. I wasn't thinking about anything like that. But there's something going on between the two countries or divisions of the one country. So those are some of my thoughts for today. I like to share a few spiritual thoughts with you at the end, but I'm pretty tired out of all this. I think in the world we have to always look at, it's important, I think, when we start looking at what's happening in the world and things, we don't get fearful. I've said this a few times. What's more important is how we live individually, isn't it? So it's important that we try to live well in life and not try to be flummoxed all the time by all the terrible things we appear to see in the world. You imagine any time in history, wherever you lived, you'd have been worrying about what's going on in the world. Vesuvius has just gone up and Pompeii's been destroyed, or the Mongols have just invaded India, or the American Indians seeing white settlers coming over. There's always going to be some horrible things going on in the world at any point in history. So I think we have to look out to our own lives and try to live our own personal lives the best we can again, because we're not here for this sort of thing. We're here for our spiritual development. And it's important, I think, to see our life as that, as Buddha said, life is a bridge, pass over it, but do not build on it. We need to see that we are passing through this life. And when we do that, all the things that approach us individually that are all horrible to us and frightening to us, well, these are just things that are passing through. This too will pass, as they say. We're just passing through life. And it's the same with the world. The world is just progressing, and all things good and bad will come into the world and fall away, but ultimately it will continue. And it's the same with our life. And I always find it very interesting to look at our life, and being a medium, I think it makes you see life in a slightly different way, because you're talking every day to people who have lost somebody very often making predictions and things, but you're quite often talking to people who've lost people, and it makes you look at the bigger picture of life. When you lose somebody in the family, it seems almost impossible that could happen. This person is the most important person in the cemetery. The world surrounded them, and that they were important people, and then suddenly they're gone. And I think it makes you look at your life and think, well, we're only here for a really twinkling of an eye. Sometimes I look at my life and it feels like ages. It feels like a long time of all the things I've done. And then other times a memory might come back to you from childhood or something, and you think, God, that's like yesterday. It was like 2 minutes ago. So we're only here for a short time. And the good news is we continue into the next world, and the next world, time is very different. We don't have a continuation of time in the next world. Time happens in a different way. People that have had near-death experiences describe it as, and sometimes the spirit world say we can't describe time. It's like it's happening, but it's not happening, as it were. It's all at once, perhaps. But it means that there's an end to it all. That means that there's peace at the end of it. It means that our life has purpose. It means that we go through this world of experience, and we go through all the difficult things as an individual and as a world, so that us as individuals and humanity as a whole can go to the highest goal, which is awakening, enlightenment. And what is that enlightenment? It's love, it's truth, it's knowledge, it's peace, it's infinity, it's timelessness, it's wonder, it's ever new. And all those things make all the difficulties that we go through in the world worthwhile, surely. Anyway, thanks for joining me again on Coffee with Craig. Please do put a comment as well. I'd love to know some of your thoughts about all these things. What do you think about what's going on in the world? How can we solve it? And if you've got any other questions you want me to address in next week's show, please pop them in the comments below. And thank you again to all the members who have been helping me both with finding some of the videos and things. And if you do want to help me with clips and things like that, and finding missing clips, or if you spot a prediction that's just come up and I've missed it, please go to the website at psychics.co.uk at top of the screen there, and find the contact page and drop me an email, because I can't respond to everything that comes in, but because it's a lot of you writing to me nowadays, but I try to be as open to people as possible, and I'm always grateful for any of the help that you can do with that, and also the timelines as I spoke about. Okay, thanks for being with me again. See you soon. Bye for now. If you look back at my earlier predictions, and in particular the predictions I made on the newspaper, The Sun's website, I did actually say on there, the actual words were, there will be a flu epidemic linked to bioterrorism.
And my thoughts are that Liz Truss will make it to the final, be the next PM. I think she will actually have a final battle between her and Rishi Sunak. We've not seen the full end of Boris Johnson either, I tell you. But Rishi Sunak actually will eventually, I feel, be the next leader of the Conservatives. So I think there's going to be a few conflicts that Britain's going to be drawn into, including I think Russia is going to take some moves against Ukraine. I think she will make it past her platinum jubilee, which comes up this year. But I think after that, we'll see a sudden and quick deterioration in the Queen's health. And I think we might lose the Queen towards the end of 2022. There's going to be a huge backlash from over the Netflix programs and screening, because I feel it comes out at a bad time. Charles will come to become King Charles, but his reign, I feel, will be short. I said that Prince Charles would be hit by an egg. And of course, there it is, all in the press today. Marvellous person she is. She does something extraordinary. That could even put her life a little bit at risk with the way she did this. Okay. Is there something also there that's not been spoken about fully? Did they also discover something with Kate that wasn't quite right? A huge swarm of people knocking the doors of Europe and America. And I feel that Ukraine conflict is going to be a kind of a grinding conflict that goes on and on. I also feel that there's something going to happen in the Middle East as well. I feel as if there's going to be a sudden and unexpected thing happen in the Middle East. So I feel they're going to take it into their own hands, and I feel we're going to get a strike from Israel. This is going to be one of the significant things in 2023. I've said it before and I say it again. I feel Israel, with the help from the USA, will strike the Iranian nuclear facilities. I said that there would be an earthquake that would shake New York. At this time, I've been sensing that for a while that there's going to be a big earthquake of some sort. And this could well come up during April period. I'm seeing a bridge collapsing, actually the whole infrastructure of it going. I predict something very dark happens to President Joe Biden. He's been pulled from power, sacked, as it were, and quite close to the election time. But I kind of sense it's more to do with illness, perhaps, senility, and people stopping him because of that. So it could even be that a new candidate will run for the presidential nominee. I predict that Trump will win the November 2024 election. And I feel very strongly that the black vote is going to move towards Trump.
see him as a sort of a bit of a cool guy. I can't see Trump being put in jail despite what they're throwing at him. I can't see a jail sentence with him. But I get the feeling one of the candidates has an attempt on the candidate's life. Could there have been a plan to assassinate either him or Trump, perhaps? There's going to be an assassination attempt on Trump, I think. And that will fail. But he might maybe get wounded or something like that.